So we're gonna be calling Shannon High.
Downey, this is your team. Please get us a Dairy Queen. We miss you, Downey. Please. Please come home, Downey.
My name is Shannon High, and
I'm going to be doing a live with Shannon from the Shannon Show. He does a podcast that specifically focuses on military brats. How's it going, man?
How's it going, Kate? Can you hear me all right?
Pretty good, man. Can you hear me okay?
My bad. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Hey, so I saw you recently did an interview with our assistant co-host, Avi, and I watched the podcast the other day. Yeah, that was his
fantastic.
first one. Yeah, that was his first one he ever did. And I just wanted to ask you, man, like what motivated you to do a podcast focused on military brats specifically?
I mean, I had the idea floating around for a while. I started it in the middle of COVID, like a lot of podcasts started, I think, just kind of bored and like, I need to do something with this time. But military brat specifically, obviously, because I was a military brat. I grew up Marine Corps brat. My dad did 20 years. He just recently retired. And I was living overseas in Okinawa, and I was having all these really cool experiences. And I would tell my friends back in the States about them, and they won't believe some of the stories I had. And I realized that all my friends, all these other military brats, had so many cool stories to share, and that's what my show's really all about,
Yeah, man. I grew up a military brat as well. My dad did 20 years in the Army, was drafted in 71. And in 1971, they were sending people back from Vietnam. So by the time he finished up with his infantry school, ranger school, and all that stuff, he was going the other direction to Germany.
Yeah.
So I was born in Wahiawa, Hawaii, which is in the middle of the island of Oahu, next to Schofield Barracks. If you look at the hospital, you wouldn't think that anyone could be possibly born there, let alone it get operated as a warehouse or anything like that. It's really run down. But I sort of experienced the same things when it came to moving around a lot and having to reestablish yourself. And how many times did you have to relocate and find some new friends and
so many. I think it was like 5 or 6 times in total. Yeah, and as many good memories as there is, there's always going to be that component of it that it needs to be talked about, just the making friends and getting acclimated. And some places are so much easier than others, right? I mean, you have Dodea schools, which I think are fantastic because it's, all military brat communities. And everyone's like really understanding of each other's position, what everyone's going through. And whenever you go to a big public school after being in a small school or something like that, it can be really tough for sure. So I made those transitions quite a few times, and I know there's some military brats that do way more than I did. And it's different for everyone, but at the end, it's really some of the same things that we're going through.
I think it's really unique that you have the platform that you have talking specifically to military brats. Matter of fact, I'm being trolled right now by one of my Marine Corps buddies. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry. Paybacks are hell, Ruben. I know you can see me out there, but at any rate, did you go all the way through high school being a military brat?
Yes. I did 3 years in Okinawa, and I guess my senior year, my dad had retired. So it was only the 1 year that I wasn't technically a military brat anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, man. So that was the unique thing for me. I was about 13 by the time my dad got out of the I was 12 by the time my dad got out of the military. So it's one thing when you're close to a base and you're around like-minded people who also live the same life, or you're relocating every 4 years or so. But I literally went from living in Hawaii. We did a quick stop in Kansas, and then we went to live in Ohio. And so everybody at this new school that I was at, they had been there their entire lives. They were able to establish their relationships and whatnot. Their parents had been there. Their pictures were on the walls as playing football and all this stuff. Their great grandparents. And it was kind of strange for me to kind of be a transplant from such a different culture. So it's certainly great that you have the platform. Have you found that there's a lot of military brats out there that kind of resonate with some of the things you talk about?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the show's not always super serious, but there's always that opportunity to talk about, like you just said, whenever you move out of the military brat community, we'll never have that one house that we lived in for 18 years, and we have all the nostalgia when we walk through the hallways and stuff like that. It's incredibly unique, and yeah, whenever people come on, they do resonate. They really do. And there's just so much to talk about, and I just love giving people the platform to come in and share what they have to say.
Yeah. So right now you're in college, right?
Yes, I'm going to Penn State doing aerospace engineering. I'm a sophomore, and everything's going well.
Cool, man. Any plans on joining the military like your old man?
No, that's not on my radar. I no, it just never really was something that appealed to me. I spent a lot of time within that community, and I'm still very grateful to be a part of it in some capacity through the podcast. But
Hmm.
and a lot of my friends are making that decision. I found that it's very common for military vets to go on and join themselves and do ROTC, and I have a ton of respect for that decision. But I just don't think it's for me.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think for me, when I got out of high school, my dad straight up told me, stone cold, like most military folks, he said, "Look, you're not
Mhm.
smart enough. You weren't smart enough to get a scholarship, so your options would be either a community college and you live under my roof, under my rules, or you can
Yeah.
join the military." So I was like, "Well, I'm not staying here, so I'll join the military."
Yeah.
So for a quick second, man, I almost went active duty Army, but then what I ended up doing was joining the National Guard, taking advantage of the 100% tuition assistance, went to a
Mhm.
4-year college in Dayton, Ohio. And then upon my graduation, that's where I got my commission. Similar to the same journey that Avi's going to be going through, where
Mhm.
he's going to ASU, enrolling as a regular student, then taking the ROTC courses and getting his commission through that journey. I guess there's so many different ways to get your commissioning. There's not just one. And when I first met Avi, he was so focused on going to the service academy.
Yeah.
That's when I proposed the whole idea. Hey, why don't you just go to a regular college and then join the ROTC program and then get your commissioning through there. So
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
really common plan too, and everyone that I know in the ROTC program here loves it. It's just really tight knit. I think it's a really good step into the military. Obviously, that's what it's designed for. But everything that I hear about it, it's great preparation. And I also know people who have enlisted, some of my friends. So it's really cool whenever they both come on the podcast. I can hear both pathways and share with my audience. So both have their pros and cons for sure. And yeah, it's whatever you want to do, or whatever's best for you at the time too.
yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. So far, how long you been doing this for?
So I started in August 2020. So I guess this is the second calendar year of doing the show, but we'll be coming up on 2 years this summer.
Oh, and
Yeah.
out of all the things that you've covered so far, what do you think you found most fascinating and the most interesting that you probably didn't know or understand before you started?
Um, Probably I had a few conversations about social media, and I think military teens rely on social media a lot more heavily than other, normal kids do, just in terms of staying in contact with
Hmm.
past friends and staying in contact with, their friends in different time zones on different sides of the globe. And there's a lot of negative things that come with the social media as well, in terms of, being on all the time, the addiction, and, losing that time that you should be spending on other things. And we spend a lot of times on our phones as it is. And so I think that was some pretty interesting conversation on how we are reliant on it more than others and having to combat the negative components of it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the great things is being able to stay in touch with folks that you knew
Hmm.
who live literally thousands of miles away. That's something that I was not able to do growing up, and I lost
Yeah,
contact with folks. But when they started coming out with the social platforms, I was able to reconnect with folks. Actually, some of my friends in Hawaii, when I got stationed back there again, I was stationed. That was my first duty station after getting my commission, was Schofield
gotcha.
Barracks in Hawaii. So it's a very small military community. I can't tell you how many times I ran into NCOs that worked with my father, and when I got stationed back in Hawaii, I was able to reconnect with a few friends of mine that I grew up with over there.
Hmm.
And we just met up a couple times, but we obviously had gone our different ways. So it wasn't like we had anything in common anymore. But even when I was stationed in Iraq, man, there was a sergeant major that was right across over at the next base, who was working as an E5 or an E6 when my dad was an E8. And
Hmm.
when I came back from deployment, there was the commandant out there at the air assault course. I was fortunate enough to get out there and join air assault. For those of you who don't know what air assault is a 2-week course that you go through, where basically you learn how to sling load different things. You learn how to rappel. Very, very challenging short course. But the point is the guy that was the commandant was now an E9, had worked with my dad. He was an E5. My dad was an E7 or an E8. And it's just amazing that years had gone by. Now I had grown up, become a lieutenant, and this guy had worked with both my dad and myself.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to keep those connections, man. And I definitely think that even with the things that the morning formation talks about, which is career transition, I always tell people that when I got out of the military and the Army in 2007, the best thing out there for social media was MySpace. And there was no way to really make connections, network with folks who could help you out with that career transition out of the military. But now there's really no excuse because you have LinkedIn. A lot of the folks that are on this live right now, I see Javier, Mike Tomquitz, all these folks on here right now. We talk about that a lot when it comes to making that transition. I know Javier is going to be leaving active duty service here in a couple of years, so he's working hard to make sure that transition is as seamless as possible. Did your dad? What was your dad's transition like?
My dad made a fairly quick transition. It was difficult for him for sure. I mean, just trying to figure out what he wanted to do. He was thinking about that for a while. He ended up doing a few interviews. He's working with Amazon now as a branch manager. I never really saw. I think I lost you for a second. Can you hear me? You good?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. So yeah, it's always a bit strange just seeing your dad no longer being in the military, just from the family's perspective, and you make the transition as a family. I know that it's primarily the service member who's going through it the most, but it's tough on you're making these moves now that aren't military based. You're not going to military base and military base surrounded by that community. It's different. It is definitely different. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes a veteran can make, going through one of those transitions?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made, and I think a lot of mistakes that veterans continue to make today, well, not veterans, current service members make today, is going at it on their own, not accepting help when it comes to making that transition, not having a certain number of people look at the resume, practice the interviews, understand some of the things. Because I'll tell you right now that when I got out, I was in 03, I was an Army captain. I thought I was going to get I thought there's going to be no issues with me making the transition out. I had my master's at the time. I just finished it up after coming back from deployment. Had my combat experience behind me. Had my rank. Thought I had a pretty squared away resume. Thought I had my interviews squared away. But the couple things that I did not understand was the importance of understanding the mission of your potential employer. And understanding networking and understanding the overall culture. So if I could go back, that's the one thing that I think I would do better. And I think a lot of people make that mistake and just assuming that every interview is going to be the same, which is not really, it's not really true. So if I'm sitting in front of Johnson & Johnson, for example, and if I don't review what their mission is overall, if I don't understand the culture of that specific company, I can't sit in front of them and have a conversation with their recruiter and then go in front of, say, Synthes Spine, which is another medical device company, and have the same type of conversation. Like, you have to understand the culture of the business that you're going to be possibly or potentially being employed by. So there's a lot more to it that people don't quite understand. It's not as simple as having the hardware. When I say hardware, I mean having the graduate degree, having the combat experience, having the military rank. You have to go a little bit further than that and understand who it is that you might be potentially working for so that you can actually talk and have that conversation.
Do you think veterans are being received better as the years have progressed in the civilian workforce, or is it not really changed?
I do. And I was having this conversation with someone not too long ago. This space is actually... The pendulum has kind of swung in the other direction. In 2007, when I got out, there really wasn't a whole lot out there. So the options for me was to either go at it on my own, go through the on-base local transition, I guess, office there, or I could possibly go with a headhunter, which is what I did. So basically what they did was they collected a bunch of senior NCOs and a bunch of commissioned officers, and they would bring us together in one city, in one hotel, and for 2 or 3 days, we would focus on making our resume better. We would interview, and then on the third day or the second day there, what we would do is we would sit across from recruiters. They would put us across like 6 or 7 recruiters in a day or two. And it was quite intimidating to do that all in one weekend. So I think now that we're able to virtually speak to each other and we're able to connect with each other, sort of how, food is my vice is making a comment here. That's Javier. He's currently in the military right now. How I've been able to connect with folks like him. Althea was on here earlier from She Vets It, to make these connections. You can do that while you're still in uniform. So I think it has gotten better for military service members since in times past. But so Javier says, I wish military coach and mentor the young service members on how to network and know the game. And that's exactly right. I think the one thing in the military that they focus on is the here and now.
Yeah.
What are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? Not necessarily what are we doing 2 or 3 years from now. And that's one thing when I was a lieutenant and when I was a captain, that's the one thing that I tried to focus on the most, was trying to stand in front of my formation, hence the name, the Morning Formation Podcast. Stand in front of my formation, and as much as possible, the NCOs do an outstanding job when it comes to running the day-to-day, when it comes to planning and everything else. But I felt like it was kind of my job to sort of inspire and bring folks to the table to understand that, hey, let's look beyond this. Friday, Saturday nights, don't hit the bars. Don't go to any kind of clubs or anything like that. Go to the education center. Invest in yourself as much as you can. Work hard, play hard type of attitude. And I actually had a few of my lower enlisted folks take me up on the advice, and they were able to knock out their bachelor's degree like in 3-4 years or so while they were in the military. And that's a beautiful thing right there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, that's such a good message. And I'm assuming that just translates right into your podcast, which you ended up starting. I'm not sure, how long have you been doing yours?
So I started mine in February.
Gotcha.
Of 2021.
Mm-hmm. And what was your initial mission the same as it is today?
Not necessarily. I knew that I wanted to somehow inspire and then also be a part of this community again. When I got out, I literally took all my stuff and I put it in bins because I felt like there was a big stereotype when it came to military folks. Mm-hmm. And I simply wanted to move on. And so I put a lot of the stuff that you see hanging up back here are things that I had thrown into bins, and went through a few years of just helping people out here and there when it came to managing and navigating their military to civilian career, people that I knew personally. And so I kind of fought with myself on what could I possibly do. And then I finally just decided, look, I'll do a podcast. I did YouTube for a while.
Yeah.
And just through trial and error, man, I really, the one thing I loved about podcasts was the overall in-depth relationship that you could gain with your listeners while having conversations.
Yeah.
We can really go like 2 or 3 tiers into things. So
how did you learn to take the stuff out of the bins and kind of embrace that, the military background?
It took a lot, man. It took a lot of, it took some therapy, took some counseling, just to try to get back to the table again and be comfortable with talking. It's the one thing a lot of military folks won't do, is we won't talk about ourselves all that much.
Right.
Some will, some won't. I really don't all that often. So getting back to the table and being comfortable with talking to folks about what you did in the military is something that I'm still learning how to do, oddly enough. And it just took time. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Gotcha.
And,
my dad's the exact same way when it comes to it. He's not the most forthcoming with some of his experiences and stuff. And I mean, for obvious reasons. And that's why I like your show. It's almost like not a peek behind the curtain in a bad way. It's just kind of like showing the other side of it that I wasn't necessarily exposed to, that he didn't always talk to me about. So it's a big learning experience for me as well, just seeing the other side of it. Not just whenever he's home and he's with the family, but what he's doing every day and what he did whenever he was deployed and stuff like that. Right. So that's really cool.
Yeah, man. And Javier was asking me, what is that back there? That is, I should know it by heart, huh? That MRE is a chicken fajita. And I think it's expired, so I don't even know if it's any good or not, but that's kind of my, if I ever get stuck back here in this office, I have an office shed back here that I kind of been utilizing as a studio. So if I ever get stuck in here for any reason, we have earthquakes. I'm in Southern California, so I see Javier put the puke face on there for the chicken fajita.
This sounds like a great YouTube opportunity. You need to crack it open. Let's go.
No, man. You may get sick right here. I don't know. I think it's expired about 3 years or so, but you know. Anyways, Javier, that'd be great, man, if I get some new MREs. I love those things. So, but yeah, man, it's great. It's great to collab. I appreciate you doing the interview with Avi.
Yeah.
You know, and getting him kind of into the community of other military brats as well. Mm-hmm. You know, he says he wasn't much of a military brat, but I get a lot of people that kind of say the same thing too.
I get that so much, for real.
Yeah, man. And in reality, you know, if your parents or you have a father that was in the military or a mother that was in the military, I mean, whether it was before you were here or not, like you're still part of that community. So,
yeah. I mean, it trickles down to you in some extent. You know, it's different for everyone, but it comes back to you. Like, it's still ingrained in your family. I mean, I've had kids on the show who didn't know their dad. Like, he passed away before they were able to meet him. And that's just that they're still military brat in my eyes. I still like to hear their experiences and know that's a very tough upbringing for them. And, you know, it's all a big family. I really do think that. And that's what the show's about.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, if you guys get a chance, check out the Shannon Show. He's on YouTube.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
On YouTube, and I imagine you're on all the podcast platforms too, right?
Yes, sir. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you know, everywhere you can find them. It's a whole lot of fun over here. We try to keep it casual, and that's one of the best parts about the Shannon Show is you want to keep it lighthearted, keep it fun, and that's how you get more kids to want to come on. I don't want anyone to be nervous. It's really chill. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about connecting with some of the ROTC folks with over there at Penn State?
Not necessarily the administrators, but I've had some of the students come on, some of the ROTC students here at Penn State. But yeah, it's definitely something I would consider. I've branched out a little bit. I talked to, I work closely with the Museum of the American Military Family. It's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It kind of documents the history of the military family, some really cool ways, history of Dodea. So, director of Dodea for, you know, on two different occasions on the show. So yeah, it's not strictly military brats. I like to mix it up a little bit here and there, but message is largely the same.
Awesome, man. At the end of the day, you're learning something new. I'm sure every single time you hit record, just like I do, every single time. And I spent 3 hours this morning on with technical support with Apple, dealing with Final Cut Pro, and so frustrating, man. But it's all part of the journey, I guess, right?
Part of the experience. There's so much that people don't see, right? So much of the editing and planning that's you know, you don't see directly in the podcast, but it's all part of it.
Frustration, man, complete frustration. But at the end of the day, you know, it's the product that you put out that I can be most proud of, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Yeah.
And whenever people ask me, you know, should I start a podcast, I usually say no because of that. I'm like, you have to understand what goes into it. It's a lot of work. I mean, obviously, I want everyone to do what they want to do, but it's there's a lot that comes with it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So, you have any questions of me of the podcast or anything?
How are you going to reach more people in 2022? How do you want to talk to more veterans? What's the plan?
Fascinating question. Fascinating question. That's a big question. It always is. Over the last year or so, I hosted a room in Clubhouse called the Military Mix-Up. And it was every Friday night, and it would go on. Sometimes it'd go on for 2 hours, and we'd have people pop in and ask their questions. We had a great panel of folks that would, of all sorts of different things, from entrepreneurship to education to getting certifications. They would show up, and they would provide a lot of information for folks out there, and that was the best thing was. Having that and hosting that, and that got a lot of outreach for me. But then after that, my moving into 2022, what I plan on doing is creating more content. I don't plan on going back to Clubhouse unless I'm just going in and adding some information or content for someone else. But I do plan on just simply adding more content, maybe adding some live in there as well. What I'm also doing is I'm shortening up a lot of my podcasts to where they're about 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes shorter sometimes, because going down from 1 hour down to 30 minutes ideally to provide just very succinct and on-target information, and also being able to plug whatever the veterans out there, the folks in the military spouses, those folks in the military community. So, but yeah, Javier, I do plan on doing more live, man. and I'm learning how to use Ecamm right now. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Shannon.
I'm not sure about that one. No.
Similar to the StreamYard, but it
Okay.
takes a little more technical skills to
There you
use
go.
it. Something I'm not really full of, but I'm learning.
I see you have a fan page. That's incredible.
That's not my fan page. I don't know. I know who that is. I know who that is. That's the Marine right there, and it's
Looks
all
like
good,
a fan
man.
page to me. Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, that's a great question, man. And back to you, just real quick. I want to know. So, what moving forward? What's the plan with the Shannon Show?
Having more brats on the show. That's primarily what it's all about, and having them, talk to their friends. It's it's just a big networking thing. I want to branch out because a lot of times I get into this like comfort area where I only want to talk to people that I know and have them on the show. But you have to branch out, and I think that's one of my focuses. And we getting military bats from all over the place, and same mission, just doing it in bigger ways.
Yeah, man. Well, I think, like I said, I saw your YouTube. I saw your video. I think to me, that was a whole new frontier. When I went from audio to video, learning how to edit that, it's easier to hide things when it's just audio.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. Yeah, man. You like when you're doing video, you can't hide a lot of things. It's you have to blend it, and it just takes a little more finesse to do that. So that's the one thing I've learned.
Yeah, I was doing video from day one, and it's not easy all the time, and just always like appearing ready for the camera. I think that's also part of it versus just hopping on the microphone and lighting and stuff. I don't know, it's like just silly things. But yeah, it's like I said, part of the process. I really do enjoy doing it. That's why I've been keeping up for this long, and no plans on stopping.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome. So Shannon, I really appreciate it, man. Appreciate you jumping on the live with me. Maybe we can do some more collab work down the road here. I just linked up with Drive On Podcast and Ryan from Bet with a Mic, and we did some crossover podcasts together. And it's great to kind of build a circle, build a community of folks that are kind of doing the same thing. Because at the end of the day, we all have one mission. And if there's anything that I can help you out with, which I don't know if I probably can, you're probably better than me. I appreciate a lot of this technical stuff, man.
I appreciate that. I always like talking to other podcast hosts too, because it's kind of a similar mindset on the whole thing. It's a little bit different, I think. So that's always a lot of fun. And I really do appreciate being on here, and it's always up for collaboration.
Awesome, man. Shannon, really appreciate it, man. We'll talk more for everyone out there. For everyone out there tuning in to the live, I really appreciate that. And please check out the Shannon Show. You can follow him at the Shannon Show, I guess, on Instagram as well. Do you have a website?
I do not have a site, but I have the YouTube channel. So that's primarily where I go, youtube.com/Shannon Show.
It's SHANON.
Yeah,
one N. Because you type in two N's, you type in two N's, it's a different Shannon Show.
Yeah, they bring you to someone else. I can't get through that. I'm like, if you type it in correctly and you still don't find me, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Big frustration.
Well, I appreciate it, Shannon. Appreciate everyone out there for joining live as well. Thank you so much. As for Shannon and myself, we're out of here. Stay tuned, stay focused, and stay motivated.